exactly saying in just written form, because there's different meanings of different words or the tonality and whatnot. Code is very Boolean. Either it works or it doesn't work. However, the way you solve a particular problem in code, there's hundreds of different solutions to the same problem, right? We've seen, I think there was a classic O'Reilly book, like 100 different ways to like say hello in Python or something.
They don't realize how much effort it actually goes into building those, like into building anything that's actually production ready and can serve your need. So if it solves something in a simple way, then I guess that's
100x or 10x all over the map. And there's plenty of those examples, and that's kind of like the strategic acquisition. Then you have like let's call it the team plus tech acquisition. So it's kind of the next tier down. It's like, hey, we want this technology, we want this team, so we want both, right?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents podcast. Today with us we have Raj Singh, who is Vice President of Product for New Products at Mozilla. He built a company called Pulse that was acquired by Mozilla. Prior to that, he built a company called Tempo AI that was acquired by Salesforce. And he is currently launched Soloist.ai, which is like AI-powered website builder by Mozilla. And I think, as you mentioned prior, a lot of people think Mozilla is just a browser, but in reality it's more like a huge technology company that does a lot of things, because I remember we went to a lot of meetups, and Mozilla hosts those meetups, like products that count and stuff like that, and like in Toronto, in Mozilla Toronto office. So can you tell us a little bit about all the cool things that you're building and the innovations that you're seeing, especially in the AI and space right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Mozilla is like in an interesting position, and I think part of that is, and I have to be careful what I say here because obviously Google's a close partner in search and whatnot, but just all of the transformation that's happening because of Gen AI and agentic workflows, or whatever you want to call it, as it relates to the browser. And so let me give you some examples. Um, the amount of content being created on the internet is, I don't know the exact stat, but I want to say it's like literally like doubling every like X days, and X just keeps decreasing, which is a remarkable stat. And part of that is obviously with AI generated content. We're just getting huge volumes of content being created. So the internet is just changing. Google itself, and how it thinks about what is high valuable content has changed. There was a point where it was sort of devaluing AI generated content, but now sort of devaluing low quality content. So there's plenty of low value human written content too, right? So it doesn't matter. So that sort of behavior. We're seeing search completely change, at least for research type queries, as opposed to like monetizable queries like shopping and recommendations. Those are increasingly going to AI chat. People aren't browsing the long tail of the web necessarily as much, because people are expecting answers. And so in some ways they're expecting an aggregated kind of view. So I think there's just this combination of things that are happening that is impacting, or at least raising questions like, what does the future of the browser look like? And so that puts us in a very sort of interesting position.
Yeah, I mean, the whole landscape has changed. Like, to your point, like when you think about it, the content that was being generated prior to AI was actually much worse. In many cases, it was horrible because you had all these horrible, like, third-party freelancers that wrote all those blog posts that they had no idea about. So now that AI started to write those posts, it actually writes them better. The problem is it writes them at scale, in which, like, to your point, a recommendation engine like Google is not the proper way to suggest things anymore. So you've been working on this AI website builder. So what are some of the things that you think in regards to content and how this is kind of moving and going and transforming?
Yeah, so a couple things here. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, low value content. So I follow something called the Google Search Volatility Index, which is basically what they do is they run 1,000 some searches every day, and they look at the shift in position in Google Search Rank. And this is an important metric from a SEO perspective, because people are always there's a whole community of people
Mm.
tracking the algorithm updates on Google, and then when they should react and whatnot, right? And Google's position used to be AI generated content, also known as slop, um, would effectively be penalized. And you see a lot of, there's a lot of examples of content marketing strategies by large publishers where they're just pumping out tons and tons of content. Um, and most of this was classified as slop. And you saw some great Twitter threads of top publisher website traffic just sort of collapsing, right? But then Google kind of revisited this, and part of that is because you have all these human content farms that are also just writing content, and they're producing low quality content, and it's not AI generated. So I guess my sort of opinion here is you can have incredibly high quality AI generated content, and I would actually go as far to say that that might actually become the norm. And a lot of it is not about necessarily the writing of the content, but the structure of the prompts and the back and forth with the AI to sort of vibe create that content. And we're already seeing that in engineering, where the role of the
Yeah.
engineer might be shifting from, for example, writing code to basically writing instructions to generate code and then reading code and editing. And so I guess where I see this going, yes, the volume of content being created is massive. Um, and yes, discovery is impossibly difficult, but I don't necessarily see those things as a bad thing. I think it's just a shift in how content creation is happening. And then in terms of what ranks, yes, the traditional recommendation algorithm, it's challenging now, right? Because the volume of content is so much, the signal to noise ratio is crazy. So I think increasingly what we're seeing, and in a world where you have like hundreds of AI agents or you have or not hundreds, millions of AI agents that you have to choose from, or millions of choices, I think brand and reputation is going to matter a lot more. So I think personal recommendations, authority, who's recommending it, people, and so you're seeing like this sort of happening from a different perspective, just through the rise of the content creator economy and like creator collabs being more valuable than even buying ads. And so I just think it's the power is shifting, and the way discovery is happening is shifting, and it's increasingly about building your own brand.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole dynamic is shifting. Like now you have AI creators, like you have AI content creators that are completely AI generated and they are making money from the content that they generate. But, Google has been saying they don't like AI content, but I know a guy personally who he did like a website with first construction in Italian language, all generated with AI at the GPT-3 days, and he ranked like top of Google, had millions and millions of visits like related to Italian construction niche. And like so they were ranking it. They just said they didn't rank it. They always ranked it. And as a matter of fact, I know Hrefs or one of them did a study regarding AI content, and they're saying majority of the articles that are being generated now by like large like SaaS companies are AI generated, and there is no difference. The Google doesn't differentiate as long as it solves like a pain point or a problem.
Well,
So
yeah, as
yeah,
long as
to
it's
your
high
point,
quality. Yeah,
I think it's yeah,
yeah. I mean, yeah. This is
as
but
long,
this
but yeah,
notion.
why? I mean, yeah. Sorry, I
Sorry, go
think
ahead.
it's no, so it's lagging. I think that's why. I need to plug in my Starlink. I just moved recently, so it's a little the connection here is not the best. I need to set up my Starlink here. But anyways, to your point, yes, we are seeing a lot of this new agents being created, and vibe coding obviously has changed coding, but I feel like we are not yet at the point of vibe content creation where people who are like technical writers or writers, they're not super savvy, right? So they're not yet implementing it at the same sophistication level as vibe coding does, for example.
So I think the macro trend is, and it's funny how the term vibe has sort of become the term for this, but this UX modality or UX pattern around chat interface to create seems to be catching on with large consumer audience across all forms of content creation. And when I mean content creation, I don't mean just short form Twitter threads or short form video on TikTok. I mean vibe creation into a medicine design, vibe creation into an architectural diagram, vibe creation into a 3D rendering of some interior. this chat input has basically unlocked creativity at a level that we've never seen. And all of a sudden, the people being rewarded in this environment are people who have lots of creative expression, but never had access to those fractional experts who could do this work because they didn't know how to design in AutoCAD and things like that. But now, all of a sudden, they're just incredibly creative people, and they can go and vibe create their dream home as if they are an architect themselves. And so this is just a massive unlock. And this sort of democratization of fractional expertise is happening everywhere. I think the real trick now is how do you um, learning the tribal knowledge that comes from vibe authoring of anything, whether it's code or whether it's a CAD diagram or whatnot, or whether it's an article, uh, comes through a lot of trial and error. And so I think you are seeing an emergence of SaaS products or just products being built in this kind of Gen AI first experience with a vibe sort of interface, as I like to call it, a new modality because it's that disruptive. Um, in the context of modalities like touch versus voice versus whatever keyboard, etc. Um, I think you're seeing new reinvention of like every existing application from a workflow perspective. It still has to solve ultimately a pain point and do all of the other um, little things that are cumbersome. An attorney just doesn't write a contract; they also have to like submit it, and they have to put it in certain folders and fill out a certain form online, or like whatever, right? So all the other little workflow things too. But the actual creation part is a vibe interface as opposed to just a simple word processor or just a simple whiteboard or whatever it is. And that is a massive unlock, because I think that's unlocking a whole bunch of people who can now creatively express their ideas.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, this is exactly democratization of rational knowledge and expertise. And once people start to capture all this tribal knowledge, and basically the only thing that AI is missing now are the processes that needs to follow, and then you can completely replace a lot of different roles and a lot of different positions. So to your point, as long as the tacit knowledge is correct and the processes are in place, did you hear about that experiment that Anthropic recently ran, where they had AI run the shop, and it found its own suppliers and it started to sell stuff, but then it hallucinated customers and started to sell stuff at discount and basically failed at the business. But it sourced its own suppliers, it had its own money, it ran itself, and eventually it failed, as many businesses do. But the fact that it was managing to do all of that is incredible. They just
I
published a
think,
paper on that, which I found. Yeah.
yeah, you're talking about the vending machine. Um,
Yeah.
you know, uh, I thought it was an interesting experiment. There was also stock GPT or something like that. This was somebody that took like
Oh yeah.
they raised like $1 million and they had ChatGPT execute the trading. I think the problem with these kinds of examples, and this really comes to light with like autopilot, um, with self-driving cars, is expectations around 95% versus 100%. And I use this simple you call it a rubric or rule, whatever you want to call it. I call it my 95% rule. And basically the notion is that you should assume that AI is 95% accurate. Maybe it's higher, maybe it's 99%, maybe it's 98, maybe it's lower, whatever. But you should just assume it's 95% accurate. And so if you operate with that model, how do you design a user experience to account for that? And if you look at
Mm.
the majority of startups in the Valley, so right after ChatGPT was released, there was a number of startups funded in the Valley that basically were out pitching to investors that, hey, I will take this existing SaaS workflow and I will fully automate it with Gen AI. And then they went and put it in practice, and they realized that it was like 96% of the way there. But fine tuning and all that sort of stuff, adding more stuff into the prompt and context and whatnot, wasn't getting them to 100%. It was still stuck around 96, maybe 97. And so all of a sudden they went back and they said, hey, we still have to keep a human in the loop. And the human in the loop is one, to obviously bring some taste, two, to review and edit and approve, and three, to kind of like, finish the workflow or confirm or whatnot, right? And that's obviously changed the economics for a number of these startups, and so now they're revisiting whether it makes sense, whatever they're doing or whatever. But the point being, um, I think that's where I think we are. And so when you look at these business examples, as you cited, vending machines, stock trading, if you use the 95% rule, that's not good enough when you're dealing with money, right? And that's why Stock GPT or whatever it was called went to zero off its initial $1 million fund. That's why the vending machine lost enormous amounts of money in this Claude experiment or Anthropic experiment because there's no tolerance. And that's why with self-driving cars, yes, we've made tons of progress. Don't get me wrong, but we still have a remote driver that can patch in for just the most gnarliest or extreme sort of use cases. So I think that's where there's a big gap. I don't see that gap closing anytime soon. That's a very difficult problem. And so I'm not in the camp that humans are necessarily being replaced, but I'm definitely in the camp that human product is experiencing a 10x through augmentation. We have even within Mozilla and
Yes.
the team I manage within Solo, we have AI engineers. So not people, but we have end to end going from linear ticket to a PR that's then human reviewed. Humans still have to write very detailed instructions at the onset, but that's basically like a junior engineer or maybe an engineering intern on your team that's picking up low hanging fruit tickets. That doesn't mean we don't need more engineering horsepower. We still need more engineering horsepower. We have a lot of things we have to build, but the role of the type of work you do has changed. Instead of writing code, you're writing instructions, you're reviewing code, you're editing code, and so this kind of model is now applying into all sorts of different verticals.
Well, yeah, I mean, cursor is basically human in a loop. If you let it run wild with your code base, you're going to push a bunch of garbage into production that you don't want. To your point, 95% quality. We had a pilot with one of my companies with a major automotive manufacturer for AI vision using LLMs. And that was the problem. It was 95% accurate. But this is for quality control for cars. You cannot be that 5% inaccuracy rate. That's how many fatal collisions is that, right? And to your point, we also have AI engineers at Doxy, and they do the same thing. They fix simple bugs. They're great at it. I love it because it can search your whole code base. It can find where the issue is, and it can fix it and PR it for you. And it's not. It's almost always right, and it's pretty good. But if you make it do a big refactor, it can completely, it will create modules that are not there. It will hallucinate, and you have to sit there and you have to keep telling it, no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. I mean, and yeah.
I think part of that
So
is
yeah.
what you're pointing at.
Sorry.
I like to call it taste. Even engineering, even something like coding, there's a boolean. It's boolean. Like, unlike in the English language where you can't necessarily tell what the person is exactly saying in just written form, because there's different meanings of different words or the tonality and whatnot. Code is very boolean. Either it works or it doesn't work. However, the way you solve a particular problem in code, there's hundreds of different solutions to the same problem, right? We've seen, I think there was a classic O'Reilly book, like 100 different ways to like say hello in Python or something like that. I can't remember. And this really comes back to taste, right? There's a sensibility, like what makes sense, what's easy for humans to read, what's easy for humans to understand, what's easy logic, what's easier to debug, what's easier to test. And this is where we do have large gaps, I think, with vibe creation tools, and that's why humans are remaining in the loop. Will we get to a point where maybe it can do a larger refactor? Maybe. But can we get to a point where we can completely rely on it and still have humans edit and improve this code at the same time? I'm not sure. I think it's going to take a long time. So I think we're a long ways from that. And it just doesn't apply to code. This applies to everything, whether it's writing, whether it's visual creation, product creation, whatnot. I think all of the above. So, but this is the macro trend. And I think the real call out here is the upskilling that large audiences of large sets of people need to do in the workforce to sort of get on the Gen AI bandwagon and looking at how it can rapidly improve their work or their productivity.
And I really, really, really like your the 95% analogy you said, because I'm still thinking about it. And like, if founders that listen to us just focus on that 95% and let their customers know that it's not perfect, but it will get you 95% of the way there, and we can automate that 95% in such a way where it's super convenient for you, then you can make money from that. I think that's the point I'm trying to. So how does your website builder like implement that? So what kind of challenges have you faced building something like that? Because I know it's difficult to chain all those prompts together to provide a coherent output. So what are some of the learnings that you have from this?
Yeah, so and it's funny, just to add on the 95% rule. So actually, the example I often cite, because my startup 2 startups ago that Salesforce acquired was a calendar company, and this is in 2015 era, 2014 era. There was a number of startups trying to do automated scheduling. This is like the holy grail of calendar problems. Like, can we get two people to agree on a time and schedule it in the back and forth and whatnot? It's probably like 20% of email, after spam, right? Like, and for some people, right? And so the problem is, if you get a scheduled event wrong, that's like a really expensive penalty. Like, that's unacceptable. Like, what if it's a critical meeting? You're dealing with people's time, whatnot. So there's no tolerance for error. And so if you look at that, era, the winner was Calendly, and they were the most manual
Yeah.
solution. There's no AI involved, right? So I find that all very interesting. So anyway, so fast forwarding to Solo. Um, Solo. So within Mozilla, we obviously have product Firebox that everyone knows about, or most people I hope know about. And then we have some other smaller products, like our VPN product and things like that. But we have a new products team at Mozilla. I'm the VP, and we've been really focused on small medium business, so like tools for solopreneurs. And the reason is, this segment is the fastest growing business segment in the world. Why? Because people want to be their own boss. This is the freelance economy. Vibe creation is certainly helping drive this now. COVID helped drive this. The side hustle, whatever you want to call it, right? People want to pursue passions and make money off of that. And so, um, Solo, the first product within this sort of suite of products that we're building, is a website builder for this community. And one of the reasons the 95% rule works so well here is, when I talk about 95%, I talk about it in the context of AI design, AI user experience. If you're designing an application like scheduling a meeting where you need 100%, almost certainly the last step in that flow would have to be a human in the loop. But if you're designing an application, you're just suggesting content, the tolerance for being wrong is like much, much higher. Like, you totally can be wrong. Like, you're just suggesting content, which you can then edit. And so in this case, a website builder works incredibly well. We effectively create the first draft of your site. And then the owner, the business owner or the author or whatnot, they go and further edit to make it their voice, bring their color, their view, their perspective, whatnot, before they publish. And interestingly, if you look at vibe creation from a more macro perspective, almost across the board, people don't publish the first draft out, right? They might if they're doing something purely programmatic, like a programmatic blog. But the vast majority of these SaaS companies, at least the mid to large tail, not the long tail, and I know a lot of these growth folks that are working on that stuff, they still keep a human in the loop to do a final review, final product edit, improve the content, improve the quality, whatnot, right? Because they want it in their voice. They want it to accurately. The same thing's true of your website. The same thing's true of your social media content. That doesn't mean there are people who are going straight AI to publish, and that's fine. You could play a volume game, you could play a programmatic game, but we're not. I'm not at least seeing that kind of behavior when I talk to these small business owners. Their brand, their touch, their taste, like, really matters. And so we help generate the first draft, but they almost always edit it into their voice and then they publish.
So have you introduced any vibe coding tools into the editor, like where they can chat to it and have it make updates, or will it just generate the first draft and then somebody goes and they change up the content manually still?
Yeah, so interestingly, when we started Solo, it was before a lot of these vibe
Mm,
coding tools. But this was 2 years ago,
mm,
approximately now.
um,
And we actually have a slide internally that we use to just kind of show these different audience segments. So one end of the spectrum could be
mm,
something like WordPress. It could be just literally React. It's like basically you're coding from scratch. Like you want to build your whole website from
mm,
scratch, all the code, etc. Right? And
mm,
then somewhere in the middle, you have vibe coding tools. I don't think of vibe coding tools as completely non-technical. Whether you play Bolt with Bolt or Lovable or Replit Agent or Vercel, you still need to have a little bit of technical chops. Like you have to basically follow certain instructions, create accounts places, upload images, possibly edit some code, possibly, and for a lot of people that's totally fine. But
oh
for the
yeah,
vast majority of people, it's still pretty. It feels like a big lift, right? And then you have, so that's somewhere in the middle.
it's too
So
much
let's call it
work.
like semi-technical. Then you have like non-technical, no code,
Mm,
right? And that's where you have these WYSIWYG style website editors. You have like Wix, Squarespace, some of these AI website builders like Solo from Mozilla, etc. But then if you further segment that bucket and you look at like AI first no code, we're in that bucket, right? If a lot of people might use Wix. Wix is
mm,
totally WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get, full fidelity. You don't need to know how to code, but it's very overwhelming because it's become like Figma. It has
yeah.
so many options and so many settings. It's like, hey, I just need simple balsamic or TL draw. I don't need Figma or even Google Slides to kind of demonstrate what I want to do. This is overkill. Solo's kind of in that bucket. So Solo is, dead simple, no code website builder. You don't even need to know how to like go back and forth in prompts and whatnot, and you have full WYSIWYG control. And we have over 40,000 businesses, maybe it's over 50,000 now
Mm,
on Solo, and it's growing every day, and that's fantastic. And and I think in this era where owning a brand is so important, so many of these small business owners want to have a website, something that they can control, because Instagram can turn on a dime. Your Facebook page is not completely under your control, and social media has gone through a lot of craziness. And so, like, we're seeing that behavior, and a lot of the additional products that we're now building within new products at Mozilla are ways to help those small business owners grow their business.
yeah, the reason why I asked, right, is because I wanted to hear that distinction because like we do like knowledge management, right? That's like my primary line of business, and we do a lot of SOPs and user guides for small businesses as well. And I just wanted to see like how you approach it from your perspective, because we're also trying to introduce AI to them. But when we introduced AI initially, it was just like enter a prompt and you configure your own prompt. And then I realized that none of those people cared or wanted to configure anything. They just want something that works, and they don't want to waste time like talking to AI. They actually find it annoying in many cases. So that's why I was kind of asking, like, what was your approach, and how do you help people embrace it and succeed with it?
Yeah, and I think what you're really calling out is there are different segments, and if you just go through a simple 2x2 segmentation, it becomes very clear that there is this large audience. And the one thing that's very unique about the small business solopreneur community, they've got a lot of other stuff going on, right? Like if you're a barber, like a hairstylist, and you want to set up a website to do like on-demand hairstyle, like I'll come to your home, I'll cut your hair, style it in whatever way you want. I've got a lot of other stuff I got to figure out. I got appointment scheduling, I got back and forth communication. Maybe I want to set up a lightweight CRM so I can email my customers because I want to drive re-engagement to get like a second appointment or a future appointment or whatever it might be. I've got invoicing, I've got taxes, I've got accounting. Like, how do I make sure I accurately expense the new the new hair cutting tools that I purchased and scissors and whatnot? Who knows, right? Combs and hairsprays and whatever. And so, my point being, there's a lot of other stuff they have to do, and the last thing they want to do is
Yeah.
spend 8 hours going back and forth on Bolt to try to get their correct version of the site, and then they hit like a roadblock where they need to know a little bit of code and they have to go find somebody. Now, that doesn't mean that isn't a great solution for a lot of people, and it is. But there's an even larger segment that really wants something more turnkey, that's stupid simple, and we go after
Yeah.
that audience. And we've been growing gangbusters in that space.
Interesting. No, this is it's a very valid point you're making. I was when you were talking about I know I have a buddy of mine. He used to be a customer success at Occidental. He decided he was gonna vibe code his own stock trading tools, and he went and he got Claude or whatever, one of those coding tools, and it rolled to him a nice looking dashboard. He was so proud of it. I'm never gonna need developers again. I don't need any of that stuff. Then turned out just hard coded a bunch of values, and it was a hard coded dashboard. He was wondering why it was not moving. And these people, they don't realize how much effort it actually goes into building those, like into building anything that's actually production ready and can serve your need. So if it solves something in a simple way, then I guess that's
Yeah, I think I would add to that first. The key phrase you said was production ready. I vibe coded internal tools, and I think vibe coding has a great role. So we within Mozilla, within my team at least, we have vibe coded internal tools to help with things like growth, manage
right.
customer support emails, things like that, right? And that's been fantastic, and it's been a huge unlock for product managers across the team. But production is different, and production at scale is different, and it doesn't mean you can't use these tools, but to say that I can do this without any engineering chops, it's a stretch. I'm sure there's examples. Don't get me wrong, but the last 20% always takes 80% of the time. And so, I think everyone should go play with these tools. Don't get me wrong, and you can certainly build internal things that you need and
Yeah.
whatnot. But production at scale is a whole different ballgame. I think the second thing is, as I mentioned earlier in this chat, just the vibe creation is not enough. Like just building your website is not enough. What is the job to be done? I'm setting up a website because I want to grow my business. So we need to also provide all those other tools as well, right? Because ultimately, I want to grow. Like I decided to build a website today for my chess coaching business because I want to grow my chess coaching business. I want to get more clients. I want you to help handle some of these paper cuts, like whether it's scheduling and invoicing, whether it's back office accounting, whether it's having a voice bot answer my voicemail when I'm in the middle of a plumbing work and I can't pick up the phone and I don't want to lose that lead, right? And so uh, we're focused within my new products team at Mozilla on a range of these tools for small business, and so I'm hoping to be an accelerator for this ever growing, business ownership, small business, service provider, solopreneur, freelancer, whatever you want to call it, community.
So, and for some of the developers who listen to us regularly, maybe you can recommend to them some use cases that they could explore that you see like large potential in, but you don't want to focus on yourself. So, maybe some of the particular cases for this agentic systems that could be built to serve your segment to make things better.
You know, I think I think the way I would approach that problem is any existing SaaS tool has a bunch of small workflows it's solving. You take Salesforce, right? A common workflow you have to deal with there is aggregating data for reporting, or cleansing data, or updating a record. Every one of those things that are like paper cuts, not like the core workflow where you need to necessarily need a human in the loop or you need like human interaction, but the paper cuts, the small things like, it's not updating these fields when I need it to do this, when I make this change here, or it's not like also emailing a copy of this when I make this other update here. All of those things are ripe for building some kind of agent. Whether the agent is coded or whether it's built on Zapier or N8N or whatever, that doesn't matter, right? But the point is, all of those are ripe. In my world, focused on small business, we're going after a lot of them, right? So we have internally at Mozilla through tools that we can offer. So, for example, we now at this point have probably spoken to thousands of small business owners, and we see their
Mhm.
pain point. It's like business email. It's like phone number when I'm working, virtual phone number, virtual receptionist. It's CRM because I want to email out my users. It's creating a blog because I want to drive growth. It's managing social media. It's analytics. It's invoicing. I want to collect payment. It's helping me gather my expenses or aggregate them because I need to file my taxes. It's a number of things. And so we're looking at each of these sort of different flows and saying, hey, can we build a tool to help them upon this? Now, could you go and build an agent to do it automatically? In some cases, you can, and that might be a good enough experience. I'll give you an example. Maybe a car wash company has social media and they want an automatic tool to just publish to their Twitter or Instagram or whatever on a daily basis, and that's certainly an option. What we have found is
Mhm.
most of this audience doesn't want programmatic. They actually want something where they can insert their brand. They do want a human in the loop. They do want to review it. They want it to make sure it feels themselves. And I think
Mm.
this is different from, when you look at the tech sector, we're always thinking like the most extreme, like, oh, full automation, fully replace, we don't need human in the loop at all, right? But like when you actually go talk to real people, like, not, I'm not saying tech people aren't real people, but the communities outside of the tech sector, it's quite different. Like they love the fact that it's augmenting and helping, assisting, but they don't want it to like be their voice, right? That isn't to say there aren't SaaS companies out there doing fully programmatic experiences, whether it's through TikTok or whether it's their blog or whatnot, and that's fine. That's their choice. But at least with the small business community, they run a surfing coaching company. They want their blog post to kind of represent their voice.
Yeah, it almost screams ownership to me, where it's like I want to feel like I'm doing this. I don't want to feel like something has done this for me and I have no control over it. It's like almost they started this business so they can have control over their life, and then if you take that control away and you say, "Wait, we've done it all for you," and it's like, no, I want to check. I want to take a look. It's this is the control portion of a small business because they're not at that scale yet where it's a machine that runs and processes. It's like individuals who are like, "This is my business. This is my baby. I want to see what this output is." Yeah, yeah. To your point, yes, that's exactly it. I really liked your point about the paper cuts. We had a guest recently, Johanan, who's built this email link system. Like AI email. Like there is a million of those AI emails, but he has managed to personalize it for the people, so it kind of uses like in context personalization. So they have like a very smart way to kind of set up the context so it knows how to write. Because LLMs, they don't write well when they are connected to RAG. They hallucinate a lot, but when it's all in context and you keep everything in the context window, it tends to perform a lot better. So this kind of made me think about the your point where this smaller use case where you can do something really small, really really well, but solve that pain points such as bookkeeping or invoicing, which everybody hates, and there is no good solutions for it even right now. Like if you think about it, like yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
paper cuts are real, and one of the thing about paper cuts. There's obvious paper cuts. If you just survey users on various products, you can just look at simple data analytics and gather that. But a lot of this is just personalized workflow. And so, what I often tell folks looking at Gen AI acceleration in their teams, or Gen AI upskilling, or Gen AI adoption, is literally like document your day in a it almost feels unnatural, but like every 10 minutes write down like what are you doing, like what are you spending your time on, and then ask yourself, hey, could I have replaced some of that work with Gen AI assistance, or could I have used Gen AI in some way to have gone faster there? And I think that it's kind of reframing your thinking, but it's a huge unlock. So it's a really simple exercise, but it has a massive sort of unlock.
Yeah, this is actually a very good piece of advice, and I think many of our listeners would find it. extremely interesting. Another question, maybe not as related, but like you sold two of your businesses, one to Salesforce, one to Mozilla. How do you do that? Like, how do you get through that? Because, for example, I get all these M&A companies write to me all the time, like, "Oh, we're gonna help you sell your business. You know, we'll give you three times your ARR or whatever." But I am sure this is like, so how do like you're an experienced product person, experienced CEO, so like just an advice of people who are trying right now to build these AI startups, because a lot of them would at some point probably be looking for an exit, and you have all this experience to share, I guess, if you want to share it, of course.
Yeah, it's this is probably its own hour-long conversation at least. But what I would say, there's an old idiom or trope or whatever you want to call it, which is uh, 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 you want to be bought, not sold, right? And so basically, uh, if you're out trying to actively sell your company, we should keep in mind what we need to level set expectations on what that outcome might be. The I think I think there's the TLDR version. There's three or four kinds of acquisitions. So there's strategic acquisitions where you should think of those as there's no rationale between the price versus the ARR or the growth or whatever, right? And this is where you might see a 50x or a 500x or a 10x all over the map. And there's plenty of those examples, and that's kind of like the strategic acquisition. Then you have like let's call it the team plus tech acquisition. So it's kind of the next tier down. It's like, hey, we want this technology, we want this team, so we want both, right? Then you have like just the team acquisition, right, which is increasingly common,
Mm.
um, right? Like, and this is in part because many companies have come to realize that it's faster to just rewrite than to integrate somebody else's tech because of different tech stacks, different code bases, different security requirements, whatnot. So integration is just too much pain, right? And then finally, you have, even, and some people call the sort of team acquisition soft landing. Then you have things that are like, unfortunately, where we are today, where they don't even do an acquisition. It's just like literally landing the team. They're literally just offer letters, and you shut down the company, and maybe there's an asset acquisition, right? It's not really a company acquisition. It's not making anything. And so, you know, um, as you go up and down this scale, the probability obviously goes way down, right? Like the number of strategic acquisitions a year is substantially lower than the number of sort of team acquisitions a year. You don't hear about most team acquisitions, but they happen, and they're an okay return for your team and founders. Founders might make out a little bit better. Usually lands them a bigger role, which is great. So those things sort of happen, but it's not like they're retiring by any means, right? Now,
Mm.
now that we've kind of laid out the different types of acquisitions, I think the first thing to realize, particularly in the tech sector, is 70% of these acquisitions is literally the CEO or the founder one day saying, you know what, we need to go acquire this company, and then just telling corp dev. And what triggers that could be anything. It could be they're at a event the night before and they're hearing another founder saying, dude, what are you doing? You're missing out on this opportunity. It could be annoying. They see something in the news all the time where the media is saying so and so is going to eat their lunch. It could be some competition they don't like, brand. It could be like some person they really like we just need that person. Just go buy this company, right? That's like 70%. There's no logic. There's no rationale. It's just like CEO just comes in. There might be some logic, but the CEO literally just like, I want to buy this company. Now, the other 30% actually has to go through some kind of process. And usually the way that works, and this is why the notion that companies are bought, not sold, is so important, is the reason most acquisitions don't happen is because of timing. And the reason is the way companies work is they don't know that they need to acquire a company until they know they need to acquire a company, right? So usually what happens is they have some quarterly offsite, the executive team's at this offsite, and they're having a discussion. And in this discussion, they go through, strategic planning, and they go, whoa, we have a big gap in our product here. You know what? We've been working on this for 3-4 months, but we're too far behind. We just need to go buy a company here, right? And then they go instruct corp dev, like who do we know in that space, and then they go and buy that company. They go and talk to Form 5, bring some options, maybe they buy a company, right? The problem is, let's say, for example, they decided they needed to buy a delivery company, like some last mile delivery company out of this offsite. The problem is, let's say you're a startup doing last mile delivery, and you pitch that company coincidentally 6 months earlier, like, hey, we're looking for a buyer, blah blah blah, and they're like not interested.
Uh, I think this is extremely interesting. And is there anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with? If you would like, we would love to have you back for another episode as well, because I think we didn't finish this one properly. But yeah, I mean, I quite enjoyed this conversation. I think there was a lot of very interesting insights that we got from you, and it's hard to find this type of insights outside of people who actually work in this space and know how to build AI systems.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I enjoyed the call. Happy to chat anytime. So let me know. And if people want to check out Mozilla products, please do. Solo's one of my products, so you're welcome to check that out as well. And they can always find me on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. This was Raj Singh, and VP of Product at Mozilla for new products. So if you have any interesting products that he might find interesting, feel free to reach out to you. Can they pitch you their products, or is this not something
Sure.
that you're interested in? Yeah.
They can ping me anytime.
All right, sure. Thank you so much, Raj.
All right. Thank you, Philippe.